Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe has the morning off. Right now on Morning News Now, democracy's darkest day. It's been 365 days since one of America's bleakest moments in recent memory. 365 days since a riot, an insurrection, an attack on the Capitol building by a mob of Trump supporters emboldened by the former president's remarks at a rally earlier that day. President Biden, set to mark the somber anniversary with remarks of his own in about an hour, expected to take aim at his predecessor for his alleged role in the deadly violence, while warning of ongoing threats to American democracy. And just moments ago, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, vice chair of the January 6th committee, speaking with today's Savannah Guthrie on where the investigation stands this morning. School standoff, a crucial booster shot expansion from the CDC as the Omicron variant continues to wreak havoc from coast to coast. The top agency panel now authorizing Pfizer's extra dose in school-aged children, 12 to 15 years old, immediately opening up access to millions of young Americans. The decision comes as the nation's school districts continue to react to Omicron's rapid spread. In Chicago, classes are canceled for yet another day today. Teachers refusing to enter their classrooms as a deadlock continues between administrators and staff. This as confusion mounts over the CDC's ever-evolving COVID guidelines. We'll bring you team coverage of the state of the virus. Also this morning, COVID crunch. Omicron is no doubt forcing some Americans with that new year, new me mentality to maybe kick that workout regimen off from home. But that's got the gym and fitness industry once again sweating, trying to navigate another surge in cases. So what does this latest strain mean for the future of an already battered sector in one of its busiest seasons? And what goes around? Your daily dose of good news on this Thursday morning. A positive deed, paying it forward in something called a kidney donor chain. How one striking billboard in Virginia united a dozen donors and recipients with the virtue of hope close behind. Now, 1 year ago today, the American Capitol was attacked when an angry mob of Trump supporters stormed the People's House in an attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. This is a live look now at the nation's Capitol, where police are bracing for any potential threats. It comes as the congressional probe into the attack builds steam, and the Attorney General vows to hold perpetrators at any level accountable. NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest.
That long and emotional day of remembrance is set to begin shortly with a speech from President Biden in which he's expected to lay responsibility for the attack at the feet of his predecessor, part of a search for accountability for this insurrection that lasted from last January 6th through this one.
This morning, 1 year after the ransack of the U.S. Capitol, President Biden set to address the nation, saying in part, "Are we going to be a nation that accepts political violence as a norm? Are we going to be a nation where we allow partisan election officials to overturn the legally expressed will of the people?" NBC News has learned officials have observed an uptick in calls for unspecified acts of violence in the past 48 hours linked to the anniversary, according to a senior intelligence official. Still, law enforcement is not aware of a specific, credible threat for today.
The next time that we're tested, we will not be making those same mistakes.
The officers who fought on the front lines that day remember the violent mob who tested them and the fury they still feel.
Are you still angry about what happened on the 6th?
Hell yeah, I'm angry. I'm absolutely angry.
Arresting the rioters who attacked police that day is now a top priority for the FBI, conducting one of its farthest-reaching investigations ever, fueled by more than 300,000 tips from across the country.
We've had restaurant workers turn somebody in because they've overheard them talking about it.
So far, according to the Attorney General, the sprawling investigation has led to more than 700 arrests, with about a quarter of those arrested pleading guilty. All while the congressional committee investigating the insurrection has pushed deeper into the former president's inner circle, late Wednesday interviewing former White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham.
But I cooperated fully, and I will continue to do so.
For Officer Dunn, without full accountability, closure on that violent day remains elusive.
Did that day ever really end for you?
I don't feel like you can totally heal or have closure to something until you have accountability, until you know the full picture of what happened.
What that accountability Officer Dunn was talking about means is very much an open question. Yesterday, the Attorney General said the Department of Justice would pursue the perpetrators of this attack at any level.
All right, Garrett Haig, thank you so much. Now, as we continue to look back on January 6th, the House Select Committee investigating the insurrection attempt has forged ahead with its probe into the riots and what caused them. Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the vice chair of the committee and one of only 2 Republicans on the panel, spoke with the Today Show just moments ago to discuss the state of the investigation.
How close did we come to the violent overthrow of a valid election?
We came very close. Our institutions held, but they only held because of the people who were willing to stand up against the pressure from former President Trump. President Trump continues to make the same claims that he knows caused violence on January 6th. And it's very important, if you look at what's happening today in my party and the Republican Party, rather than reject what happened on the 6th, reject the lies about the election, and make clear that a president who engaged in those activities can never be president again. Unfortunately, too many in my own party are embracing that former president, are looking the other way, are minimizing the danger. That's how democracies die, and we simply cannot let that happen.
Big picture first. For those who think maybe this was a protest that got emotional, out of control, how high does it go? Have you been surprised or alarmed by anything you have unearthed so far in the committee?
You know, we have unearthed new things in every single aspect of our investigation. I'm confident that we'll continue to do so. The committee is absolutely determined to ensure that we understand the entire plot, the entire plan to overthrow the election, to really overturn the rule of law. One of the things the committee is very engaged in right now is litigation. The former president is attempting to hide behind executive privilege claims.
Is the former president, President Trump, in a better position today, legally, politically, rhetorically, than he was a year ago to subvert a U.S. election?
We will not allow him to subvert a U.S. election. He is certainly continuing his efforts in that regard. I have tremendous hope, Savannah. There are millions of Americans across this country who understand their responsibility with respect to defending the institutions, defending the Constitution. The American people have the ability to ensure that we protect our Constitution and we protect our institutions with their votes, with their voices, and we certainly are not going to be part on our committee of allowing those institutions to be unraveled.
Our thanks to Savannah Guthrie for that interview. Now to the latest on the COVID front. Millions of parents are sending their kids back to school uncertain about how long in-person learning will last. Several school districts have already gone remote in light of the recent COVID surge. But in Chicago, the standoff continues between Mayor Lightfoot and the teachers union. This all comes as booster shots become available for kids 12 to 15. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss joins us now from New York City with more on the latest CDC recommendations and all that news. Stephanie, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. You know, this news about the booster will be welcome for a lot of parents and students. But, you know, the reality is that vaccination rates amongst school-aged children are much lower than the national average. And there are a whole bunch of teachers in Chicago who think classrooms are unsafe. In Chicago, school has been canceled for a second day. But this is no snow day. Instead, the teachers union and the city are at odds over how to stay safe from COVID in the classroom.
We are going to fight to get our kids back in-person learning.
Hundreds of thousands of families are impacted.
The kids are kind of caught in the middle, and parents like myself are really scrambling to get coverage.
The main concerns from the teachers union center around testing. There's word of a plan being worked on to go remote next week with a return to the classroom by the 18th.
I want my students to learn, I want my children to learn, but I also want us to stay safe.
Nationwide, teachers and staff are out sick in record numbers, more than 1,600 in Miami-Dade.
Anyone who's available in the building is being asked to watch other classes.
Late Wednesday, the CDC approved Pfizer boosters for 12 to 15-year-olds. Just over half of 12 to 17-year-olds are fully vaccinated. That drops to less than 16% for 5 to 11-year-olds. Healthcare workers are also scrambling to deal with staffing shortages. In New Jersey, hospitals are cutting back on some elective surgeries.
It's a very different patient population in terms of severity, but it's still a lot of numbers.
While others are quickly running out of ICU beds. In LA, more than 1,000 first responders are out sick or in quarantine. This as criticism grows over the CDC's current COVID guidance. The agency stopping short of requiring a negative test for people with COVID to end a 5-day isolation period.
This has nothing to do with the shortage of available tests because you can see in our quarantine guidance that we actually do recommend a test for people to emerge from quarantine.
Some health experts calling the comments concerning and contradictory.
I'm very concerned about the CDC towing the line of whether or not we're basing our guidelines on science.
There's some good news when it comes to the death rate. It's rising, but only minimally, and is really more evidence that the Omicron variant is less severe. But these case numbers are so high that they're affecting really every part of American life, including the music industry, Savannah. They've announced that the Grammys are postponed.
I know. I'm sure a lot of people will not be happy to hear about that, but it makes sense as we're seeing this surge. Stephanie Goss, thank you so much. Let's now bring in South Miami Children's Clinic Medical Director, Dr. Tina Carroll Scott. Doctor, good morning. Thanks for being here. So let's talk about these booster shots among kids. So we're talking about 12 to 15-year-olds here, which is really only this chunk of kids who are eligible for the vaccine. That's 5 and up. So how much of an impact would booster shots for that age group have on what we're seeing among hospitalizations, school shutdowns in this age group, especially as Omicron spreads?
Yeah, so it's great news for many parents, and it will add one more layer of protection to help keep kids in school during this winter surge with Omicron. And it can be given 5 months after the second dose instead of 6. But truthfully, we really must continue to focus on getting more children their first shot. We still have nearly a third of children in the 12 to 17-year-old age group who are unvaccinated. And the vast majority of the pediatric hospitalizations recently across the U.S. have been with unvaccinated children who were eligible to be vaccinated or those not eligible at this time. And although the severity of illness so far seems to be less than with Delta, the issue is that when you have so many children being infected all at once and presenting to the hospital for care, it overwhelms the hospital system and it makes it difficult for patients who are coming in for non-COVID related issues to receive care. I also think that many parents have bought into the false narrative that healthy children will not suffer the severe effects from this virus. And that is just not true. During the Delta surge, actually 30% of the hospitalizations in the 5 to 11-year-old age group were healthy children with no underlying health issues. And we're seeing similar trends with Omicron. So it really should take another variant infecting healthy children in greater numbers to get more children vaccinated. You know, we have to stay 10 steps ahead when it comes to this virus and continue to be proactive instead of reactive.
So, Doctor, I think you bring up a really good point about how parents feel about kids, if they should be concerned about the potential severity here or not. So just clear some of this up for us, because from the start of the pandemic, we've been talking about how kids were either not catching COVID or it wasn't being detected or it really wasn't a concern for them. I remember there being lots of conversation about, so I guess kids can still go outside and play with other kids because they're not really catching the virus, things like that. So what is changing now? And tell us exactly what it is that's causing more children to be hospitalized. What does a parent need to know about the potential impact of COVID on their kids at this point in the virus with the way it's mutated and with the way that we're handling it?
So with this particular variant with Omicron, because it is so much more highly contagious, it's basically spreading like wildfire. So I can tell you that over the last 2 weeks with this winter break, almost every single child that has come in with any type of respiratory issues, whether it's cough or runny nose, has tested positive. So I think that's probably the biggest change. And as I stated before, even though the kids for the most part are faring well when it comes to not getting severe disease, even a mild illness, people are still utilizing our healthcare system. And when you have so many people coming in at the same time that are infected, the hospital system is basically stretched to capacity. And so I think that that's the biggest problem. And the other thing I would add is that it's not only COVID. We have other respiratory viruses that are circulating at this time. So including influenza and RSV, which causes bronchiolitis. So we're seeing in hospitalized children where, they're coming in with multiple viruses. And I think, that's the biggest issue right now.
And this new nightmare called flu-rona that we talked about in our last hour, which is just not something any of us need. That's a great point about most kids coming in with a cough or runny nose are now testing positive, which is a huge difference. Doctor, quickly, I want to ask you about one new report that suggests that 22 billion more mRNA vaccines are necessary to get rid of the Omicron variant. I mean, are we any closer to this slowing down? What do you make of that report? What do you make about where we're at the virus?
So, I think it's clear from everything that we've seen that the mRNA vaccines confer the best protection against this virus and its mutations. And the booster shots have increased protection significantly, especially with Omicron and the partial immune escape that we've seen with the primary vaccine series. But I think we have to remember that, although this, this is a global pandemic, and vaccinating certain groups of people and not others will not end this without many more lives being lost. And we still have millions of unvaccinated people, not only here in the US, but around the world. So as long as we have so many people who haven't even received the first vaccine dose, we're just going to give this virus so many more opportunities to infect, replicate, and change in a way that may render our current vaccines and therapeutics ineffective. And we're already seeing that to a certain extent. So really, none of us are safe until all of us are safe. And we can't boost our way out of this pandemic. So we have to focus our efforts on vaccinating the rest of the world.
Dr. Tina Carroll Scott, so much good information this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, forecasters are warning it could be a messy afternoon commute in parts of the southeast as a second winter storm makes its way through the region. For more on that, let's now bring in Bill Cairns with a check on your Morning News Now weather. Hey, Bill, good morning again.
Good morning. And Savannah, I'm also going to give you your weekend forecast, too. So I know you always like that. So yeah, I know, right? So let's get into this forecast. I-40 is by far the worst road to be on. Hopefully we're not going to have like stranded vehicles and stuff like that, but it is a possibility because it's snowing hard right now in between Memphis and Jackson and up towards Nashville. And this is going to be a decent snowstorm for this region too. I mean, Jackson 2 to 4 inches, Nashville 4 to 6 inches. Doesn't happen all that often in the South, maybe once or twice a winter. And Kentucky's going to get a good deal of snow. Not so much Cincinnati to Louisville, but Lexington southwards toward London and then definitely into West Virginia. Then as we slide, this is going to fall tonight and early tomorrow morning. You notice that darker blue, that's 4 inches. The snow forecast is going up just a little bit in areas of the Northeast, especially along I-95. D.C., your snow should end early enough that the plows should have a lot of it cleared by your morning rush hour, but that won't be the case from New York City to Hartford to Boston. Snow will still be coming down pretty good clip at 7 to 8 a.m. from New York to Hartford. Boston, the snow will be the heaviest as we go throughout your morning commute also, so keep that in mind. And also that 6 to 10 inches of snow in Buffalo, it is snowing hard this morning from lake effect snow, so be careful traveling through the Buffalo area on the New York State Thruway. So it's a frigid day. There's a really cold air mass behind this storm system. Look at Minneapolis, a high temperature of -1 today. Chicago only 17. And as far as the weekend goes, Friday we'll watch that snow pushing out of areas of the Northeast. A very frigid morning in the middle of the country on Friday. Then on Saturday, rain develops in the middle of the country. It's kind of a quiet Saturday. But then on Sunday, that eastern storm will move through. It looks warm enough that it will be a rainy mess in areas like Kentucky and then also through West Virginia, a wintry mix in the Northeast. But, if we get this snowstorm, Savannah, and then we get a heavy rain event on top of it on Sunday, we may have some flooding issues to deal with, and especially Tennessee and Kentucky.
Oh, no, that does not sound good. All right, Bill Cairns, thank you so much. Stay warm in this snowstorm. All right, there's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. A violent K-9 unit attack caught on camera. Now, the rideshare driver involved is hurling a plethora of lawsuits at one Bay Area police department. We'll tell you about it next. But first, throughout the show, we're honoring the heroes of January 6th, the people who defended the U.S. Capitol and protected our democracy. Washington, D.C. police officer Jeffrey Smith, Capitol police officer Howard Liebengood, D.C. police officer Kyle DeFreytag, and Officer Gunther Hashida. These are 4 officers who protected the Capitol on January 6th, and they all later died by suicide. We thank these officers for their bravery and service 1 year ago today, and we're thinking of their families on this tough day. If you or anyone you know is struggling, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text TALK to 741-741. More Morning News Now after the break. This morning, we have new video of a police canine attack in the San Francisco Bay Area. It happened when a driver got pulled over in a car he rented to use as a ride share. NBC News Now correspondent Zincle Esimwa has the latest on this story. And first, we do want to warn you, the video you're about to see is disturbing.
Put your hands out of the window! Chaotic moments after police pull over a driver.
Out of the window, both hands!
According to a federal lawsuit, Ali Badr was driving a rental car that was wrongfully reported as stolen.
Both hands out of the window! Come out of the car with both your hands in the air!
This police body cam video is from December 2020 in California.
Both hands in the air! Show us your hands right now!
Showing a canine attacking the driver and the moments leading up to the dog's release.
In the air! Put your hands in the air! Do not reach into that car! Walk back towards the sound of our voice! Get on the ground!
Ali Badr's arm was in the dog's bite for what appears to be at least 45 seconds. We've paused the video because of its graphic nature. Now he's suing the city of San Ramon, as well as the police chief and the officers involved. Badr needed surgeries and has not regained full use of his arm, according to the suit. He alleges excessive force and a breach of civil rights, according to the lawsuit.
There is a place for canine use and public safety. The people who are fleeing the scenes, they can, scent them and track them and help locate people.
Carmen is a former police chief and NBC News law enforcement analyst.
There should be a high level of concern before a dog is deployed to bite. And we all know the history of how dogs were used during the civil rights era.
Badr is also suing the two car companies he rented the vehicle from, Hire Car and Karmami, to use as a rideshare. The contract he signed said the company could report the vehicle as stolen if the car wasn't returned, according to the contract provided by the attorney. But Badr's attorney says,
"We know this. The car was not stolen. It never should have been reported as stolen."
Did Badr miss any car payments?
We're looking into that, but it looks like he did. He missed a short period of car payments.
Now attention is on the San Ramon Police Department as to why the dog was deployed when Badr was making no attempt to flee, according to the suit.
What are you calling for? Who needs to be held accountable, in your opinion?
Well, primarily the police department. And it just shouldn't have happened. That's who we think should be primarily held responsible.
This case, as activists and groups like the Marshall Project call for more police and canine oversight, as police use of canines is not widely tracked in the U.S.
There's a huge amount of liability if a canine is set upon a subject without reasonable probable cause to make an arrest and to take that person into custody.
How is your client doing? How is Badr doing?
Well, thank you for asking that. He is, as you might imagine, still traumatized by it.
NBC News has not reviewed the police report, and the San Ramon Police Department has not responded to the lawsuit or NBC News' requests for comment. And we reached out to Karmami, and a spokesperson responded with this statement. It reads, in part, "Our heartfelt sympathy goes out to Mr. Badr at this time for what he endured with his injury and the extent of his recovery process as a result of his interactions with the San Ramon Police Department." Karmami last received a payment from Hire Car for Mr. Badr's rental on December 9th, 2020. After extensive efforts to have the car returned or paid current, Karmami filed a missing vehicle report with the San Jose Police Department on December 20th, 2020. It's worth noting that day is the day of the incident. We reached out to Hire Car too, but have not heard back. I spoke with Badr's lawyer Wednesday, and they say they hope this lawsuit will ensure this kind of incident never happens again.
All right, that was Zincle Esimwa reporting. Thanks so much. Let's now look at what's making news around the world this morning. Matt Bodner is back with us from Moscow. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. We'll start this hour off in Hong Kong, where all flights from the United States and 7 other countries have been banned amid the continued rapid spread of the Omicron variant. Other nations hit by the ban include the United Kingdom, Canada, and India, among others. The move is part of a wave of measures that amount to Hong Kong's harshest restrictions since the start of the pandemic. We move along now to the Vatican, where Pope Francis today told an audience that people who choose to have pets instead of children are selfish. The Pope argued that motherhood and fatherhood are integral parts of the human experience, and to reject those roles is to take away our humanity. It's actually not the first time he's made comments like this. He made similar ones in 2014. There's also a 2016 comment that some scholars argue is a declaration that all animals go to heaven. But we'll save that for another day. We finish up in Australia for what very well may be the most Australian news story in history, very least the most Australian I've heard. A 17-year-old lifeguard at a beach in New South Wales rescued a kangaroo that ended up caught in rough surf and was unable to swim itself back to shore. The lifeguard, Lillian B. Young, was only on her fourth day on the job when she spotted the animal struggling just off the beach. She got on her rescue board, paddled out in rough conditions, she notes, helped guide the animal back to shore. Savannah?
Oh, wow. How cool is that? Also, Matt, you couldn't hear me, but I let out quite a laugh when you just said we'll save the animals going to heaven discussion for another day. Thanks so much, Matt.
Lots of follow up on this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got a lot to follow up on this week for us. Don't forget, okay? See you soon.
True.
All right. Novak Djokovic is set to remain quarantined in Melbourne, Australia until Monday after his visa was canceled. The world's #1 tennis player was denied entry on arrival despite first getting a medical exemption to compete in the Australian Open without a vaccine. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobaya is with us now. Kelly, this is when so many people are talking about, of course, he thought he could play, was already on a plane there when all of this sort of happened. Tell us what the latest is. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, well, the latest is Novak Djokovic is now facing a deportation order in Australia. He spent 8 hours at the airport pleading his case. Still in Australia, but maybe not for long. Tennis ace Novak Djokovic, seen here at the airport in Melbourne, is now holed up in a quarantine hotel this morning, while his lawyers launch an urgent bid to keep him in the country for the Australian Open, less than 2 weeks away. Overnight, the Australian Border Force confirming Djokovic failed to provide appropriate evidence to meet the entry requirements to Australia, and his visa has been subsequently cancelled. The 20-time Grand Slam winner announced on Instagram earlier this week that he had an exemption permission. Australia's leader, Scott Morrison, leaving no doubt where he stands.
Rules are rules, and there are no special cases. Rules are rules.
Fellow tennis star Rafael Nadal wading into the argument, telling reporters,
if he wanted, he will be playing here in Australia without a problem, no?
Fans and supporters have gathered outside Djokovic's hotel.
It's not fair. It's being discriminating against him.
Djokovic's father saying in a statement that he's being held captive by the Australian government, adding his fans will gather on the street and fight. But many Australians who have suffered some of the world's strongest COVID restrictions are not impressed by Djokovic's attempt to enter the country.
Well, I think it's a disgrace. I really don't agree with there being one rule for one and another rule for others.
At stake, a chance to beat Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal's Grand Slam record and take his place as the greatest player in men's tennis history. Djokovic has stumbled recently, trying hard to hide his emotions after losing the U.S. Open last year. He has said in the past that he's opposed to getting vaccinated and has kept his own status private.
So whether someone wants to get a vaccine or not, that's completely up to them.
Djokovic tested positive for COVID back in 2020. But he'll be staying at that quarantine hotel over the weekend, Savannah. His detention hearing has been adjourned until Monday.
All right, Kelly Kobaya, that's a talker. Thank you so much for joining us. Now coming up, continuing coverage of the January 6th insurrection 1 year later, where Stop the Steal now stands in America, and a terrifying firsthand account from one Colorado congressman reliving those harrowing moments from inside the People's Building. Those stories are next. Welcome back. Now, back at the start of the 2020 lockdown, New Yorkers could find a little joy by taking their favorite cocktails on the road. I can't confirm or deny if I was one of those New Yorkers. Well, Governor Kathy Hochul announced Wednesday she will bring back the beloved to-go drink policy, woohoo, in an effort to help out bars and restaurants. The policy had expired back in June of 2020, cutting off a valuable stream of revenue for restaurants when indoor dining was closed. Now, as Omicron cases surge in New York, reintroducing that policy could pick up some of the slack for places that have suffered due to staffing shortages and fewer customers. So whether you prefer a margarita, a martini, a Moscow Mule, maybe an Aperol Spritz like myself, have your glasses ready. And in the words of Governor Hochul, cheers, New York. Now, as the country marks 1 year since the Capitol riot, we're looking at how the big lie that the election was stolen is still believed by huge numbers of people. Here's NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson.
After rioters assaulted police, invaded the Speaker's office, and hunted the vice president on January 6th, there was a sense maybe this violent shock would put an end to the lie that drove the insurrection, the lie that the election was stolen.
Count me out. Enough is enough.
But 1 year later, the opposite has happened, with the so-called Stop the Steal movement growing even stronger inside the Republican Party.
The election fraud of 2020 presidential election. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
The conspiracy theory promoted by former President Trump claims President Biden did not actually win the 2020 election. That's not true. Key swing states rechecked their vote totals. Georgia counted its ballots 3 times to be sure. A Republican-led audit in Arizona affirmed President Biden's win there, and courts rejected dozens of flimsy legal challenges put up by Mr. Trump's allies. And yet, nearly 3/4 of Republicans polled by NBC News now agree with what's known as the big lie.
What are the biggest warning signs that are flashing to you right now?
All of this is no longer about 2020. It's about the next election, when the loser doesn't like the outcome of the results, being able to more easily claim victory.
Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold points out it's positions like hers, a state's top elections official, that keep the guardrails in place. But this year, about 2/3 of Republican candidates for that position in key swing states have questioned the results of the 2020 election.
The next time a candidate wants to reject the actual results of an election, it will be easier for them to do so. That's what this is all about.
Some of those Secretary of State candidates backed by Mr. Trump, who's endorsed Mark Fincham in Arizona.
By removing the fraud, Donald Trump won.
Election denier Christina Caramo in Michigan.
That makes us feel like they're complicit in stealing the election from the American people.
And Jody Hice in Georgia, a congressman who led an objection to his own state's results.
We have lost election integrity in Georgia. We have lost election confidence in Georgia.
And that Georgia race highlights what's at stake. Hice, who declined our request for an interview, is challenging the current Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, the man who famously resisted Mr. Trump's pressure to overturn Georgia's election results.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Raffensperger's refusal protected the legitimate results in Georgia, but he's been out fundraised by Hice.
Is this the GOP that you want to be a part of here?
I think that we need to realize that we have honest and fair elections, particularly in Georgia.
Before November 2020, most Republicans polled by NBC News thought their vote would be fairly counted. Now, fewer than half do, showing why the Stop the Steal movement is so problematic.
It shouldn't be controversial to say, if I cast my ballot for this person, then my ballot should be counted for that person. That should be the least controversial thing in American democracy, but somehow has become horrifyingly partisan.
The big lie, eroding confidence and our democracy. Hallie Jackson, NBC News, Washington.
And coming up, a COVID crunch is once again making America's gyms sweat. How Omicron's surge is slamming an already battered industry in one of its busiest seasons. That's up next. All right, welcome back. Now in Washington, the nation will hear testimonials from members of Congress who were inside the House chamber on January 6th. Leading them will be Colorado's Democratic Congressman Jason Crow, who was holed up in the gallery when the mob stormed the Capitol. The Today Show's Savannah Guthrie spoke with Crow about his experience and began by asking him what his most vivid memory is of that day.
I think it was sitting there huddled with my colleagues as we thought, how are we going to get our way out? Just being trapped, knowing we were surrounded by that mob. Many of us had called our families and making that call that nobody ever wants to make, wondering if you'd ever see him again. Just remembering that moment and that about 20 minutes or so where we were trapped in the gallery was something that still sticks with us. And even watching those images and seeing those photos, I think is hard for many of us.
Yeah, you and many of those others that were trapped that day, the gallery group, about 20 of you, you've kept in touch, you've formed a kind of support group. What's it like every day since then? Is it hard to walk into the Capitol on some days? Do you or some of the others there feel that trauma still?
Well, people feel different ways, Savannah. You know, trauma impacts people in a variety of different ways. For me, it's not hard for me to go to the Capitol. I'm actually emboldened to go to the Capitol. I want to go back to that place, and I do that work. For me, it has reaffirmed my love of this country. It's reaffirmed that our democracy is about people. Our democracy is only as strong as the people who are willing to stand up and fight for it. And that's why I think there's an opportunity for us as a nation here as we reflect on this somber day. There's actually an opportunity for us to renew and re-engage with our democracy and to make this a year of democracy in action. And we're actually releasing a toolkit today that's going to give action items for Americans across our country to stand up and start doing that, to advocate, to volunteer and engage.
All right, that was Savannah Guthrie interviewing Jason Crow just moments ago on the Today Show. Now, NFL star Antonio Brown is defending himself for the first time since his surprising departure from Sunday's game that I'm sure you remember when he stripped off his jersey and left the field. Brown's now alleging he didn't quit, but was fired for refusing to play with a painful injury. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest on this story.
Yeah, we've been watching that moment play out over and over again, trying to figure out why it happened. Well, now wide receiver Antonio Brown is sharing his very different side of the story, saying that he was pressured to play in that Sunday game despite suffering from a badly injured ankle.
This morning, star wide receiver Antonio Brown on defense, sharing for the first time his version of what happened during Sunday's Bucs game against the Jets after his dramatic mid-game exit, stunning players and fans.
Antonio Brown, that's Antonio Brown without his uniform.
Brown says he was injured and in extreme pain, but ordered to play anyway, writing, "I didn't quit. I was cut. I didn't walk away from my brothers. I was thrown out." Adding, "They threw me out like an animal and I refused to wear their brand on my body, so I took my jersey off." Brown says he played as long as he could on a badly injured ankle before taking a seat on the sidelines. And that's when he says Bucs head coach Bruce Arians ordered him back on the field. He didn't call for medical attention. Instead, he shouted at me, "You're done," while he ran his finger across his throat. Brown also accused the team of trying to cover up his injury, writing, "Despite the pain, I suited up. The staff injected me with what I now know was a powerful and sometimes dangerous painkiller that the NFLPA has warned against using, and I gave it my all for the team." During a press conference Monday, Arians painted a different picture, saying the two never discussed an injury on the sideline of Sunday's game.
It was cleared to play last week, played good, cleared to play this week.
In his statement, Brown says an MRI revealed broken bone fragments and a torn ligament, vowing that once he's healthy, he will return to the NFL.
Now, we have reached out to the Bucs organization. They're declining to comment at this time, as well as the NFL. Meanwhile, Brown's still technically a part of the Bucs team because he has not been officially waived. However, it is highly unlikely he'll continue wearing that jersey in the future. We'll send it back to you.
Morgan Chesky, thank you so much. It's now time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you. Dominic Chu is with us today. Hey, Dom, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. So we are getting a fresh snapshot of the state of the U.S. economy and the labor market this morning. The number of Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits actually rose to 207,000. That's more than the economists were expecting. They were looking for 195,000. Also, the number of people filing for multiple weeks of unemployment benefits, or so-called continuing claims, also rose to about 1.754 million. That was also higher than forecast. Warner Media and ViacomCBS are exploring a possible sale of the CW network, which they jointly own. The Wall Street Journal reports one of the suitors is Nexstar Media. That's a large owner of CW local affiliates. The CW's programming caters primarily to teens and young adults. Warner, which produces many of its shows, has generated significant revenues selling those shows to Netflix and other streaming platforms. And get this, I like talking about food, and I know you like hearing about it. Taco Bell is launching a taco subscription service nationwide after testing it at select locations in Arizona. The Taco Lovers Pass is available exclusively through the fast food chain's mobile app. It lets fans choose one of 7 tacos per day for 30 consecutive days. And the cost, Savannah, $10. I will just tell you right now, sign me up. I am getting a taco subscription.
Yeah, okay, a taco subscription is amazing. Also, Dom, You don't know about this, I don't think, because Bertha has been with us the last few days. And Bertha has ended our CNBC Money Minute over the last 2 days with a story about Little Caesars, then Chipotle, then KFC, and now you're hitting Taco Bell. And I am ready to cancel the CNBC Money Minute because you guys make me crave fast food before 9 a.m.
So here's the problem, Savannah. I mean, you and I work morning news. We've already been up for hours at this point. It's lunchtime for us. Yes.
Yeah, but it's not lunchtime for fast food. It's a new year, new me, you know, the whole thing. All right,
Somebody
Dom.
says, hey, Savannah, just if you can get me pad thai at 9 in the morning, I would love you for it.
We can figure that out, I'm sure. All right, Dom. Thank you. Good to see you. Now, many people have the same New Year's resolution. Maybe eat healthy, like I just said, or exercise more, of course, and that makes January the busiest time for gyms across the country. But as COVID cases surge, many health and fitness clubs are feeling the burn, with more than 20% of them permanently closing due to the pandemic. That totals more than 9,000 locations. Here's NBC's Vicki Nguyen.
Welcoming a new year can mean ringing in a new you. But with Omicron flexing its might, gyms across the country are feeling the COVID crunch.
Typically in January, this is a busy time of year. People making resolutions. Are people rushing to get back into gyms?
Unfortunately, Vicki, we are not seeing that.
According to the International Health, Racquet and Sports Club Association, in the U.S., 22% of health and fitness clubs have permanently closed during the pandemic, totaling more than 9,000 locations and eliminating 1.5 million jobs.
Before this last variant, our gyms were somewhere between 65 and 70% at capacity, which is really about breaking even. We are really, really struggling.
IHRSA President and CEO Liz Clark says the hard-hit industry hasn't received any federal relief money after losing $30 billion in revenue. Gyms struggling to retain members fed up with changing mask and vaccine rules, as they also face the challenge of implementing new technology to give members remote options, with small businesses taking the biggest hit. But some chains contend they're in good shape after pumping up cleaning protocols, improving ventilation, and following state and local mandates. While Crunch reports a continued growth in membership, Planet Fitness says membership levels have reached 97% of its pre-pandemic all-time peak. Businesses that remained flexible capitalized on the consumer demand for working out at home.
20-minute full body strength coming your way.
Last year, sales of home fitness equipment were up nearly 100% over 2019. And in late 2020, fitness companies like Peloton pedaled their way to major earnings, the stationary bike maker tripling its revenue to $758 million. Victoria Busby, a former boxer and gym rat, ramped up her personal training business by pivoting to live online and recorded classes.
What do you think about the move to working out at home?
The reason why I love personal training is watching people grow, helping people feel confident in themselves. And I think being able to do it at home, it's so much more convenient. It takes so much less time out of your day. Plus, you don't need all those bells and whistles.
Victoria says all you need is a little motivation, some good music, and a place to sweat. She'll take care of the rest.
Let's do it. Let's have a great class.
What do you say to people who are skeptical that you can get a really good workout at home?
Try it.
Well, okay. Time to summon some big win energy.
This is one of my go-to pre-workout stretches.
I'm hearing a lot of snap, crackling, and popping over here.
And one. Go right back into that down dog.
I mean, have we even been doing this for 5 minutes? My whole body is like burning.
We're nice and loose. And a little bit of a sweat. We want to try to keep our shoulders here and our abs tight. Let's go, let's go. Ski, ski, ski. 3, 2, and time. My claws are burning. Shake it out, shake it out.
Just to be able to do all that with just my body weight, no special equipment, a small space and corner in my house. That was awesome. Thank you.
You are a rock star.
I'm panting so hard now.
Whether you choose to feel the burn at home or at the gym, fitness industry experts say there are more options than ever to exercise.
All right, yeah, Vicki, kicking off the new year right. And coming up, further proof that no good deed goes unnoticed. How a billboard in Virginia kicked off one very special donor chain. We'll tell you what that is and how it gave hope to a dozen people. That's up next. What goes around certainly came around in an amazing way for a group of 12 people who created a chain of kidney donors and recipients. NBC News senior national correspondent Kate Snow joins us now with more on this incredible story. Hi, Kate. Good morning. It's great to see you with this good news story.
Hey. I know, right? Some good news, finally. I do a lot of bad news, Savannah. This is great. Every year, more than 100,000 people in the U.S. are waiting for a kidney transplant. Only about 17,000 will actually receive one. So it can be hard to find a match, even among families. So in a donor chain, someone who isn't a match for a local patient, maybe a family member, agrees to instead donate to a patient at another hospital. And then that hospital arranges a donor to give to the next hospital, and so on. Each step of the chain helping a stranger until eventually it comes back to the place that it started. This chain of 12 people was one of the fastest ever.
It all started with a visually striking billboard in Virginia, an artist in search of a kidney donor.
I saw it twice, maybe it means something that I saw it a second time.
Innova Health had already found a donor for the woman on the billboard, but 25-year-old Garrett Canning decided to still give a kidney. That started a chain that would pass through 6 states across the eastern U.S. The first recipient, a 32-year-old woman at Vanderbilt in Tennessee. Her friend, a mom of 6, sent her kidney to Jason Gentry in Lansing, Michigan. We gathered most of the participants together on a Zoom.
So because of Garrett seeing that billboard, Jason, you have a kidney now.
I received an awesome gift. Yeah, thank you.
Jason had been struggling to find the energy to go fishing with his son, exhausted after teaching second graders all day. Not anymore.
A friend of mine has referred to my kidney as the Incredible Hulk kidney.
How long had you been on the list waiting?
It would have been 4 years in November. Wow. It's been just amazing how great I feel.
Lisa Klaus had heard about Jason in her church newsletter. When she wasn't a match for him, she had agreed to help form a chain.
Whatever we need to do, let's do this.
So you gave your kidney to Brian at Wake Forest. Have you met Brian yet?
I have not.
Hey, Brian.
Hi,
Brian. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Bless you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that so many people were helped out, but I cannot explain what a blessing this has been for me.
I've been waiting to see what my angel looks like, and so it is an honor to finally see you.
Brian Holloway's church friend in North Carolina, a father of 3, donated to Kathy Soders in Ohio, her 3rd transplant.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, actually. Fabulous. I can't believe how great I feel.
A huge change from last year when Kathy's husband had posted a plea for a donor on Facebook.
Jennifer, you saw it on Facebook. Tell me what happened inside you.
It really wasn't even a choice for me. I'm sorry, I'm getting all emotional already. It really wasn't even a choice. I probably didn't even get through half the post and I was already on the phone to my Uncle Matt. I just told Aunt Kathy, I said, whatever we need to do, we'll do it.
Jennifer Abel didn't match her aunt, but she could donate to a man in New Jersey, prompting a New Jersey donor to complete the chain, sending Hung Dao a kidney, a patient at Innova in Virginia, where all of this started.
Never stop waiting and still live positive, and you're gonna get a gift one day real soon like me.
That's beautiful. You're saying never give up hope.
I want to say to all of the donors, because all of you made this happen for each of us, not just one of you, all of you. This chain would not exist without you. So thank you. And thank you is way too small of a word.
People like Lisa are just awesome because she didn't know who I was. She didn't know who I voted for. She doesn't know what my beliefs are. She just wanted to be able to change somebody's life.
For the donors, it's been life-changing too.
You just get to a point in your life where you realize that you see the bigger picture.
Jason, you said this gives you faith, this chain.
Yeah, it does. It gives me faith in just humankind.
It took less than a month to choreograph all of this. That is really fast, Savannah. The donors say that they bounced back quickly, too. Garrett, who's young, was actually in a wedding just weeks after the surgery. Also worth mentioning that there is financial support available to help donors with travel and expenses. They are really hoping, Savannah, that sharing this story will inspire some other donors.
Oh my gosh, Kate, a good news story, but holy moly, I'm totally crying. I mean, when he said, I've been waiting, I can barely even say it. I've been waiting to see what my angel looks like. Oh my goodness, Kate, thank you. Incredible story. Yeah. And that does it for this hour of Morning News Now, but the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.